Now, a lot of people will say that Tyreek Hill is just speed. That's the only reason he's able to get open, create separation, but he is actually one of the best route runners in the league. And today we're going to be breaking down some of his best film from the 2023 season thus far. So I hope this helps out the shorter guys, the smaller guys, the faster guys, and how you guys can create separation. So I hope this video gives you a ton of value, but also, fellas, if you're a receiver or a quarterback and would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we are coming out to 15 different cities across the U.S. for 2-day long QB and wide receiver camps. So check out that very first link in the description below if you guys would like some more information, how you can sign up to work with us. We're going to be coming out to San Francisco, California, Miami, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, Charlotte, North Carolina. All 4 of those camps, you guys, are completely sold out. But then we'll be heading out to Portland, Oregon, Dallas, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Chicago, Illinois, Buffalo, New York, Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, Texas, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, Boise, Idaho, and Los Angeles, California. So again, fellas, if you want some more information on how you could sign up, check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get started with this video. All right, so this first example here I want to go over from is Tyreek Hill's route running is going up against a physical press coverage DB who is crowding you at the line of scrimmage. Now, I'm sure if you're a smaller wide receiver, you've been in this situation a lot where you got a bigger physical linebacker, strong safety type guy, not giving us much room off the line. And this is a great example of Tyreek Hill's press release ability and ability to separate off the line. So let's play this full speed and then we'll go in and break it down. So he gives a jab move off the line of scrimmage, and you guys got to pay attention to how it is a lateral jab off the ball. So when he gives this move, it's not like he's going into the DB. It's not like he's running at him. It's not like he's trying to step on his toes in this situation. He's not raising up his chest, and he is almost trying to avoid the hand contact from this DB. Guys, when you're on the shorter side of things, smaller side of things, because if you've ever seen him in person, he's not the biggest guy in the world, right? He's very fast, he's very quick, he's very built, but he's not the biggest dude in the world. So his game is not going to be, okay, I'm going to go close the space of this guy and engage in all this contact, try to hand fight with him, especially when he is right up on the line of scrimmage, not giving us much room to breathe. What we have to do is we have to try to make this DB miss laterally. Now, this is a different story because on this channel, we've talked a lot about when you have a DB who's maybe 2 yards away, you want to close the space. And absolutely, you want to do that. But if you're on a shorter side of things, you've got to understand the concept of range. And range is exactly what Hill does here. So you see how when he makes this move, he's stepping almost like towards his right tackle, if you will. But when he steps towards his right tackle, he is still stepping outside the frame of this DB. That is the best way to get a DB to move and get him to jump in terms of your press releases. A lot of wide receivers are very choppy with their steps. So they'll come out of their stance, they'll give all this quick footwork, whatever, but they're operating inside the shoulder frame of the DB. If you want to get him to jump and you want to actually make him think, because the whole purpose of a release is to make the DB think you're running in the opposite direction, we actually have to step like we were running in that opposite direction. Treat it like if you got a DB who's in head-up press like so, and you want him to move to the right, pretend like you got 3 driving lanes. You got the far left lane, you got the middle lane, and then you got the right lane. You want this DB to move to the far left lane. So let's actually step outside of his frame to the left lane, but because he's crowding the line, it has to be a lateral step. If he was off maybe 2 yards, you could step a little bit more vertical, more 45, but this is that release IQ that I am talking about. This is why Tyreek Hill is much more than just speed. So he steps outside of his frame, gets this DB to jump, and honestly, with his type of speed, and I'm not saying he's not fast, guys, this he's a fast player in probably the history of football. So if you get a DB to hesitate for a second and be flat-footed, he's gone. You cannot cover him. Now, another thing that I want to add, I'm going to play this release full speed one more time. Another thing that I want to add is even on this over-the-shoulder pass, this is great catching technique right here to not allow this DB to play his hands, right? It's called having late hands. So anytime you're a wide receiver running a deep pass downfield, we get a lot of questions about how we can be more consistent when catching a deep pass. Guys, being late with your hands does not let this DB know where that football is going to be. A lot of wide receivers, anytime that ball is thrown over the shoulders, they will raise their hands up. It's almost like they're high pointing the ball. If it's underthrown and it's like a jump ball, yeah, go up and get it. But if this ball keeps you in stride, you want to catch this thing almost at your chest level. You see how Hill does not show his hands until the last second? DB has no idea where that ball is, no idea where to play his hands because he showed his hands late. So this is a textbook goal line fade rep here. So guys, remember, if you're on the shorter side of things, and you want to get separation when this DB's right up in your face, make him miss lateral. Understand range. Do not get into his range. It's like a fighter. Like when two guys are fighting, they talk a lot about boxers and their reach, right? You want to stay out of his reach. You do not want him to be able to extend his arm and touch us. We want to stay out of that reach by stepping lateral off the line. So let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great release there by Hill, and then being able to win on that fade. So now, next route I want to showcase here is going to be a deep 15, 20-yard out route here versus an outside leverage zone coverage DB. So this is a look that Tyreek Hill gets a lot, right? He gets a lot of outside leverage coverage because when a DB is lined up, and this goes for all wide receivers off the line and anybody who's watching football at the time, you see a DB who's lined up outside leverage, which means he is shaded just slightly to the outside of the wide receiver where he is lined up in the offensive formation. If he's shaded to the outside, that means that he does not want us to run to the outside. And what is Tyreek Hill the most dangerous on? Probably a fade route, right? And how do you run a fade route? Usually it is with an outside release. We're going to talk about how he takes an inside release on a lot of his fade routes in a second on this video, but he doesn't want to get beat to the outside. So he's going to be shaded outside, but no DB would ever play Tyreek Hill outside leverage without some kind of help to the inside. Because what else is he a threat of? He is a threat of running just kind of a drag or a deep bender. And if there's no help over there towards the middle, that DB is screwed because not a single DB in the NFL can run with Tyreek Hill. So if we have to run an outside breaking route, we got to have a plan. And Tyreek Hill is very, very good at this. And his speed absolutely helps him with this, but his technique at the top of the route plays a big factor in why he's able to get separation. So he comes off the ball. Now, on every single route, whether it's a 5-yard hitch or a deep 15-yard out, you have to do something called self-fade. Now, Tyreek Hill has got the advantage of being able to self-fade right off the ball, just looking at the guy. You know he's fast, right? You know he's quick. You've seen the film. You've seen all the plays that he can make. So he's a vertical threat when the ball is snapped. However, guys, we're going up against some of the most talented DBs in the world in this specific case. If Tyreek Hill doesn't sell the route with his speed and he gives away the route by something called having an indicator on his route, he's not going to get that much separation, guys. These DBs are extremely talented. So when he comes off the ball, selling fade is about 3 things. It's about having good pad level in your routes, running in full stride, and then obviously speed. It's more of like a controlled speed. It's not like balls to the wall, full speed. It's more of a controlled speed. But he comes off the ball, and I want you to pay attention to his body language. There is not a single change in his body language. He's got a slight lean forward with his chest. His chest is slightly ahead of his waist, and his strides are long all the way up until the break point. You watch the first 10 yards of this. It looks the exact same as the last 5 yards of this. That is textbook right there, and that is exactly how you want to sell vertical. Now, why is selling vertical in this situation important? Because when you have a DB who's outside shade, if we just try to run around him and break to the out route, remember, his goal being outside shade is do not let us run to the outside. So if we just take off and try to run to something called his blind spot, this DB is going to widen and he is going to squeeze us to the sideline. So when he squeezes us to the sideline, essentially that makes us run closer to the sideline and we break on an out route. We're going to have a DB right on my hip, not as much field space for the quarterback. On an outside breaking route, guys, you got to give the quarterback room. So what we want to do is we want to sell vertical, but we want to attack his inside shoulder and his inside hip. I want him to think that I am running deep. My goal is to get him to open up the gate right here and have his hips and shoulders committed to the opposite end zone. If I can do this, I know I'm going to be able to slip under him. And then again, you guys, he has space to the outside. And look, here's the safety help that we were talking about, right? So if Tyreek Hill were to just try to run like a deep skinny post, he would be right there and it would be essentially a double team coverage. And he gets this a lot, but this is an easy way to beat it, especially on a deep out route. So he attacks that inside shoulder, gets him to flip the gate, gives the quarterback room to be able to throw him open, and then you see he could just accelerate out and use his speed to increase the separation. He got separation by knowing how to run this route correctly. He got separation by having great technique on selling vertical, knowing how to attack the right shoulder of the DB. But also he kept separation by giving this room to allow himself to accelerate out. And when you give the quarterback that room, that is a very, very easy throw for him. So let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by Hill attacking that shoulder, selling fade, and giving the quarterback room to throw him open. So now, this next example is, I think, probably the best example of Tyreek Hill's route running throughout the year. This is going to be a situation where he's got a DB who's lined up inside shade press first, and then he disguises his leverage and jumps to the outside. And Tyreek Hill is going to be running a fade route. So this is a situation, again, that a lot of talented DBs will do against a guy like Tyreek Hill to disguise their leverage. So last example was zone coverage, right? Zone coverage and the DB was outside shade. Now this is press coverage and this DB jumps to being outside shade. Does anything change about the DB's responsibility? No matter what it is, regardless if he's press coverage, if he's zone coverage and he's outside shade, his responsibility, do not get beat to the outside, force everything to the inside where his safety help is. Now as a receiver, because it's press, I have to run this route a little bit differently. And we're going to talk about how. So let's play this full speed. So Tyreek Hill comes off the ball, gives a little shuffle release, DB jumps, and he takes the inside release on the fade. This right here is like the freaky speed that allows him to beat this safety help. I think think the safety help maybe should have been a little bit closer. But again, guys, just because you have speed, you also have to know how to use the speed. There's going to be a certain point, because I'm assuming most of you watching it, probably 99.9% of you watching this, are nowhere close to the speed of Tyreek Hill. And that's fine. And you may be really, really fast. You may be a 4.4 40-yard dash, but Tyreek Hill is still way faster than you. And he's got a different gear that he could kick into, especially when the pads come on. Now, there is going to be a point in time, like maybe you're in youth football, maybe you're in high school football, and you're the fastest guy on the field at all times, and you just get away with running past people. There will be a time where you're going to face a DB who is just as fast as you. And if you don't know how to run routes and how to use your speed to get separation, then you're not going to be able to do it. There will be, I promise you this, especially at the collegiate level, there will be a DB who has the exact same speed as you, and if you don't know how to get open, you won't get open. So what Hill wants to do here, and I'm not pretending like I'm in his head, but this is at least what it looks like. He's got an inside shade press coverage DB. What's a release that you see a lot of wide receivers like Hill, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, especially Devontae Adams? They come off the ball and they do this little like shuffle to the outside. They call that a slide release. And they do like a little slide and then they just take off and go. And the purpose of that release on the slide is to get this DB who's inside shade to kind of slow down his tempo with his feet and expect an inside breaking route. Because a lot of wide receivers will do this slide to the outside, give like a crossover. You see Devontae Adams, he makes a living off of that release. They'll slide and do that. So we're trying to get this DB to sit inside shade and expect that, and then we just beat him with speed to the outside. Now, when we take this shuffle to the outside, it's also, press releases, guys, are also about reading DBs. And again, this is why I think Tyreek Hill is so much more than just speed. You slide off the ball, you're also gathering information on this DB, and it happens fast. This is something that he has repped out over and over and over again, so it's an automated habit in a game. I guarantee you he's not having this run through his mind during a game. I'm breaking this down for you, so maybe you can think about it a different way and be able to process that information faster and easier. So he slides off the ball. Now he's reading this DB. Releases are just about having a plan as much as they are about reacting. So he slides off the ball. DB jumps to the outside. Okay, fine. I'm not going to force this outside release if I don't have to. There is something called an MOR fade, which is a mandatory outside release. And if that was the case, he'd have to force the outside release. Usually those are plays where the receiver's running a fade route and the slot receiver's running like a 5-yard out or a deep 10-yard out. So you want this corner to have to turn his back. You don't want to take an inside release because the corner could essentially play both routes and almost like trail you on the fade and drive on the out route. Okay, so now he slides. This is not a mandatory outside release. DB jumps to the outside. Okay, fine. I'm going to put the brakes on. I'm going to give a crossover, and I'm going to take what he gives me. I'm going to take the inside release. And now he takes the inside release, and now his main goal is to stack over the top of the DB. There is no reason as to why you can run a fade, as to why you can't run a fade with an inside release. You don't always have to take an outside release unless it's a mandatory outside release. If you take that inside release, and again, this is what I'm talking about, knowing how to use your speed, and you use your speed to stack over the top of the DB, stacking the DB is essentially when he is running directly behind you. It's the same exact throw for the quarterback, guys. Everybody wants the outside release so they're close to the sideline and they could have this easy fade ball. But guys, if this DB jumps outside shade and you force this outside release when you don't have to, and the sideline's right here and you're running right next to it, guys, that's an impossible throw for the quarterback. Take it from me. Give him room to fade you open, just like that 10-yard out that we were talking about. So if this DB takes away the outside shade, or takes away the outside release, take what he gives us to the inside. And this is all reactionary based, you guys. Tyreek Hill wants to just slide and go. DB jumps. Okay, cool. I'm going to react, and he's able to still create separation. Okay, so now this is another example of Tyreek Hill running a slot fade route versus a DB who's outside shade again. And notice the trend here, guys. Tyreek Hill is rarely, unless it's the red zone, getting inside shade press. Again, if you are a faster wide receiver, guys, you are going to get this type of coverage because they are going to be double teaming you every single snap just about if you truly have that kind of speed. And that's why I think Tyreek Hill does not get enough credit for his route running because people don't realize that this guy is double teamed every single game and he's still able to put up numbers. He's still able to get catches. He's still able to make people miss. It's very, very impressive, right? So now this is just a different type of coverage, right? This is more of something called a catch technique coverage, which is where this DB is essentially trying to make Tyreek Hill pick a release so he could get hands on him, right? But you see how this DB's lined up outside shade again of him. So what does that mean? don't give up the outside route, and force everything to the inside, which is where he has safety help, right? So Tyreek Hill on this, it's a little bit different, right? On that zone coverage look where the DB was like 8 yards off, he attacked his inside shoulder and then slipped outside. And you could do the same thing on a fade route, right? It doesn't have to just be an out route. You can do the same exact thing and then fade to the outside. Now, when it was press coverage, DB's right up in our face, we give him a release and then take the inside release. Now, he's off about 5 yards. So what do I do? And this is what I'm talking about. You got to close the distance and you got to make sure that you keep range because he is on the smaller side of things. So let's play this full speed, then we'll break it down. So he comes off the ball, gives a move, and then takes the inside release, able to stack, easy money. And again, there's the safety help, but safety help is nowhere near because Tyreek Hill paid attention to the details on this route. So let's talk about it, right? So anytime that this DB has space from us, we have to take the line of scrimmage and we have to bring it to him. We got to bring the line of scrimmage to him, and we almost got to try to step onto his toes. So Tyreek Hill comes off the ball, closes the space, and then you see, again, he gives his crossover. But notice how he's not running into this DB. He's not getting into his range. It's like a fighter, guys. If you get into the range of a fighter and he can touch you, you're more likely to get knocked out. Same thing when you are a smaller wide receiver going up against a bigger physical DB. Leave yourself about half a yard when you throw your move to the outside. And again, he brings the line of scrimmage to him, and you look at this crossover. Very, very similar to what he did off the line of scrimmage when the DB in the very first example brought the line of scrimmage to him. He's stepping outside of his frame, selling with his hips, selling with his shoulders, gets that DB to jump. Now he takes this inside release, and you see how, again, when it comes to hand technique with a move, you guys always want to be concerned with beating the hand of the DB, because I'm not saying as a shorter wide receiver you should avoid all contact. I'm just saying you don't want to run into the guy and get into his range. You make this guy miss. If you're taking an inside release, your main concern should be beating his inside hand. Don't even worry about his outside hand. If he lines up outside leverage, I'm going to attack his outside leverage. I'm taking an inside release, but my goal is to beat the inside hand. So he gives him a move to the outside. You see how he just swats. It's just a simple swim down, swat, and then you see how he gets hip to hip with this DB. They call that getting skinny, and getting skinny helps you stack over the top of this DB. So now, guess what? Quarterback has plenty of room to fade him or just put the ball right on him because now we got separation. And that was not him just running by the guy. You guys, he did not just run by him. He attacked him. He closed the distance. He attacked his leverage. He made him miss. He stepped outside of his frame. Like I said, there is much more to this guy's game than just speed, and that's what I want to showcase to you guys because it is tough to create separation when you're getting double teamed on every snap.